and welcome to What Are the Odds? In today's video, we will discuss the likelihood that the events are to be repeated in the Adjustment Bureau. David Norris is running for Senate, and it appears as though outside forces are dictating his every waking decision. He meets Elise Sellis, who is hiding in the men's bathroom. They hit it off, and he is inspired to change his speech. Like the one he's giving that night, not his way of speaking or his mannerisms. That makes sense, right? Right, David? Like it's not confusing, right? Like, it's not confusing. Yeah. Give me the silent treatment. I'll just go ask Charlie. Hey, Elise. Charlie? Charlie! Event number 1. The chance meeting. Harry, the agent responsible for David, sleeps through his assignment, enabling David to once again run into Elise. Because of this, he is able to get to work earlier than they were expecting. When he arrives, everyone is still. He walks in on a group of guys recalibrating Charlie. They chase after David. They put him to sleep and want to reset him. They can see his future and how he won't stop pursuing the truth. Part of their plan requires David never to see Elise again. They release him after he says he won't speak a word of this to anyone. David and Charlie go into a meeting at his new job, but David can't focus. Harry goes to meet David and attempts to convince him to give up. Harry explains that they're like case officers that live a lot longer than humans. Also, keeping David from Elise is a pretty high priority. The movie insists on a 3-year gap here. Since the movie is saying nothing significant happens during this period, I will ignore it odds-wise. Event number 2. David and Elise meet again. David catches Elise walking down the street and runs after her. The agents weigh their options. If David and Elise kiss, the adjustments required to break them up will create ripples stronger than their limit. They resolve the case, avoiding a direct hit. Kiss. David gives an announcement speech. After the speech, David spots 2 agents through a window and gets suspicious. He rushes over to Pier 17 hoping to see Elise. His calls to Cedar Lake, Elise's dance company, won't get through. The agents have disconnected the phone lines everywhere in a 3-block radius. He discovers where the Cedar Lake dance company is by asking someone in a cafe and repeatedly fails to haul a taxi. One of the taxis he tries is hit by a car, and David is stalled by one of the agents posing as a cop. David sees Elise dance, and the agent tailing him has hit his ripple limit. The agents do some research and discover that David and Elise were meant to be together until the plan changed in 2005. There are remnants from the old plans that are keeping them together. Adrian, Elise's ex, calls Elise 4 times in one morning. David is redirected by Thompson, another agent. Thompson explains how history has been manipulated by them. Thompson tells David that they plan for him to win this next election and 4 more after it. He can change the world, but it won't happen if he stays with Elise. Furthermore, if they stay together, both their dreams will end. Event number 3, Elise's accident. Elise has an accident during her performance. She sprains her ankle. After seeing that Elise has sprained her ankle, David gets hesitant and leaves her in the hospital. Another time gap, this time 11 months. David is giving another speech. Through the newspaper, he finds out that Elise is marrying Adrian. David meets with Harry. Harry reveals that if Elise ends up with David, it fills the void in him. David convinces Harry to help. In the rain, Harry teaches David about the doors. He must always turn the knob clockwise. There are thousands of ways to get to the courthouse using the doors, but he needs to learn to stay on the substrate to avoid Thompson. David is fortunate the rain has started up again as it mitigates their powers. David begins his door chase and enters the substrate. He makes it to the courthouse and rushes through. He meets Elise in the bathroom. He reveals everything to her, and the agents deploy the intervention team requesting an emergency reset. They exit again through the doors. They turn the handles to the left, or counterclockwise this time, and visit their agency. to find the one who wrote the plan. They end up cornered on a rooftop. They kiss and the agents disappear. The chairman ends up changing the plan. This film's final event is that the chairman rewrites the plan to adjust for David and Elise's relationship. Factors include a chance meeting, second meeting, David not being reset, David's perseverance, Elise's injury, Harry, the rain, the door chase, and the rewriting of the plan. As for the reasons, anything that helps further David's romantic pursuit of Elise and limits his obstacles can be considered a relevant, beneficial factor. Anything with the opposite effect is still relevant, it just plays a different role. It's time to calculate the odds. For the chance meeting, there are two critical pieces to this event. We'll consider the discovery of the Adjustment Bureau by David to be a tethered event as a direct result of their failure to stop him. Therefore, we just need to consider the odds of both Elise's choice of route and Harry's sleep-deprived screw-up. If both those things are to occur at the same time, we get the chance meeting. First, Elise. We'll assume that her taking the bus that day was out of the ordinary for her, considering for 3 years she never did it again, at least not when David took it. Therefore, we'll take the odds to be 1 over 3 times 365 to get 1 over 1095. Second, Harry. Harry had supposedly been taking on case after case without a significant break. While Harry isn't human, I'll assume that the case agents have some shared physiology with humans. I'll go as far to assume that case agents are just like humans, only with larger lifespans. While a screw-up like this isn't unheard of, considering the talk about a reset, I'll assume this is the biggest of Harry's career. All that has to happen is that he sleeps through his assignment. He slept on the bench nearby where his intercept with David was supposed to be. He woke up just in time to see that he screwed up. Now, if he'd taken the offer of a paid vacation, another case agent likely would have stepped in, so a 1 over 2, he does. Next, we'll add another 1 over 2 that he sleeps at all during that time. Finally, the chances that he sleeps for the right duration. The point of interception occurs somewhere in a park during David's commute. All he's meant to do is bump into him and spill his coffee on his pants, causing David to change. Presumably, his window is only a few minutes, or the time it takes David to walk through the park. We'll presume Harry to be in need of an N-hour power nap. Without knowing when he started makes it more difficult to gauge when he'll wake up, but it will most likely be following the N hours he needs. We can take an approximation of 5 minutes and 1 hour. Therefore, there's a 1 over 12 chance that he wakes up during the critical time window. This assumes that he needs an hour's rest starting at the critical 5-minute interval. If he awoke at any time before that, he'd likely just wait it out, and if not, his odds don't change. For this chance meeting, the odds would be 1 over 52,560. For their second meeting, the odds are much more in their favor. David has taken the same bus for 3 years straight. Now, the Adjustment Bureau has taken steps to avoid their meetings. The only reason David finds Elise next is by pure coincidence, as she was walking by the bus route. This indicates that David's persistence in taking the same bus every day can't be influenced by the Adjustment Bureau. This implies that Elise's commute on this day took them by surprise. Assuming that, we can speculate that Elise takes that route at the right time once every 3 years. If we assume this to be the case, this second meeting would seemingly be an inevitability given enough time. All instead impart odds on whether or not David notices. David's purpose on the bus is mostly to look for Elise. However, his gaze may still be occupied during the critical window. For this, we'll determine Elise's walking speed, the bus speed, and how long David's recognition window is. We'll take an average walking speed of 1.34 meters per second. We'll take an average city bus speed of 20 kilometers an hour, or 5.56 meters a second. We'll take the recognition window to mark a distance the bus makes up on Elise, during which David can spot and recognize her in time. We'll take that to be twice the distance from how far someone can be recognized. If A represents the distance from David's gaze to the window, and B represents the length of the bus window, and C represents the distance from the window to the middle of the sidewalk, we can determine the recognition window to be solved by x is equal to b times a plus c over a. The units don't matter here, only the relationship between a, b, and c. For now, I'll assign a 0.25 to a, a 0.5 to b, and a 3 to c, or x will be 6.5 meters. If the bus holds a constant speed at 5.56 meters per second, and with Elise going the same direction of 1.34 meters per second, David only has a recognition window of approximately 1.54 seconds. If his head can rotate 180 degrees or 90 in each direction, and we assume each degree is equally likely, we'll also assume that his gaze and attention matches the orientation of his head, and that the vertical movement of his head isn't of concern during the 1.54 seconds. Then during the 1.54 seconds, David has 45 degrees he must look to catch a glimpse of Elise before it's too late. This 45 degrees is taken from the arctan equation. The odds that he starts in the 45 degree range at the beginning of the window will be 45 over 180, or 1 in 4. From there, we'll accept that David could look in a new direction every half second. This should give him 3 more attempts. The resulting odds come out to 1 minus 81 over 256, or 175 over 256. For not being reset, this is merely a matter of how troublesome a reset can be. It must be at least partly problematic because they don't choose to reset David in the end, or throughout the movie. Therefore, I'll apply odds of 1 over 2. David's stubborn perseverance. When David loses track of Elise, he strives to seek her out at the dance location. The trouble is, he doesn't know where that is. The Adjustment Bureau is actively working against him, cutting phone lines and rerouting taxis. Ultimately, this culminates in David successfully making it to the dance location. This can be seen as an inevitability, given that all of the Adjustment Bureau's efforts went wasted. However, a key part of David's success relied on a stranger's knowledge of the dance studio. If anyone he approached happened not to know where the studio was, or misled him, he'd be out of luck. We'll isolate for a few factors in this case: the percentage of people knowledgeable of the studio, and the duration of Lisa's dance. Now, the duration of the dance only matters in correlation to David's own time limit. If the dance lasts 1 hour, has started, and David is an hour away, it is likely too late. But as long as he is closer than the dance is to the finish, he can still see Elise dance, which, according to the case agents tracking David, is a key event. We'll call this adjusted time limit X and the percentage of knowledgeable people Y, where X is in minutes and Y is in percent. We'll make assumptions and throw 2 arbitrary numbers out there. We'll say he has approximately 30 minutes to wade through strangers at a success rate of 1 over 50, or 2% for each person. His approach allows him to ask groups of people at a time. We'll say he can average about 10 people reasonably in a minute. Given these numbers, we'll throw them into an equation. In 30 minutes, he can wade through 300 people. A 2% success rate for each person gives him a 99.77% chance. We solve this by taking 49 over 50 to the 300th power to get 0.23%. For now, we'll say this event was inevitable, but that depends on the number we'd use in the formula, that being 1 minus the fail rate for each person to the amount of people asked times 100%. Given that the Adjustment Bureau has certain limitations and ripple limits, I'll assume that as long as David knows where the dance studio is, he'll get there in time. Ankle sprain. I'm not going to include the ankle sprain in the odds calculation. While it did help convince David that leaving was the right course of action, any injury at some future point in time could have had the same effect. Considering he left Elise at the hospital, all this event technically does is either delay his departure from her side, or delay his inevitable return. Harry's involvement. Harry feels responsible for the situation given that he slept during a critical part of his job. For that reason, I'll assume these angels or case agents have similar human emotions, including guilt. Without Harry's intervention, it's reasonable to assume that Elise's marriage to Adrian would transpire. Harry's intervention will be assigned 1/2 odds. Rain during the critical juncture. David and Elise lived in New York City. Back in October of 2010's New York City, it rained during 33.33% of the days. I'll ignore the door chase as well, as they end up caught eventually. Presumably the climax could have occurred anywhere without the odds changing. The final decision for a rewrite. This final decision for a rewrite could also be included in the odds for a reset. Instead, I'll add another 1/2 odds. Multiplying the odds, we get 1/52,560 times 175/256 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/3 times another 1/2 to get 175/322,928,640, or reducing that to 35/64,585,728. Well, now we know if you were to travel to a random split with the exact same necessary initial conditions, the likelihood that you'd see these same events transpire and the successful outcome of the final event is 0.00054%. Thanks for watching.